Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. I see that we have some people already joined, so welcome. We're going to wait 4 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Can somebody just send me a little shout out that you can hear me okay? Thank you. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can folks hear me out there? Testing 1, 2, 3. Thank Mitch. Thank you for responding. It's gonna be a fun one today. We have a great crowd, and hopefully everybody's well out there. We'll give it 3 or 4 more minutes, and then we'll jump in. We can also use this time as we're waiting. If anybody has been in the previous 2 webinars, I think you've enjoyed them because you keep coming back. And is there anybody have any questions? On the first one was about cabinetry and selecting the right cabinetry, which hopefully that was beneficial. And then last week was a fun one. And well, they're all fun, but that was where we were actually doing a study of a kitchen layout. For people that are just joining in, you haven't missed anything. I'm just talking away, filling the air until we get started in 3 minutes. Okay, let's get started. Thank you for visiting again, the webinar. And we're in the 3rd of I don't know how many, I have 8 scheduled, but I think we're going to go more than that for you guys. And had a lot of fun today. We just got done with the kitchen class. I don't know how many out there have taken the kitchen class, but that's so valuable. And so welcome the students that were at the class this morning. And let me take care of a little bit of items here about the webinars. So next week, remember, they're all free. We're going to go back to 10 o'clock. The only reason we were at 3 o'clock today was because of the kitchen class. So we're going to go back to 10 o'clock. Next week's going to be another good one. So you notice that we're building on the kitchen. So next week, we're going to talk about appliances and talk about the budgets and talk about selecting what appliances are going to be the right fit for you. And then we go 2 weeks from now, we'll do a study like I did last week, except we'll talk about lighting in the kitchen. And then we jump ahead to bathrooms and the home office for a couple of weeks, and then we'll come back to the kitchen. And so with the kitchen, I think maybe we'll do a webinar on countertops and sinks and things like that. So that's going to be what's in the future. So productive day. It'll be productive after the webinar, because at the Hall family tomorrow, it is Thanksgiving. So I've got a 25-pound turkey sitting at home thawing, and I have to go home and make the stuffing for it. And I actually snuck out at lunch, went to Patterson's with my mask and gloves, and got a strawberry rhubarb pie. So I'm ready for Thanksgiving tomorrow. So let's get started. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about going and accessorizing the kitchen. Remember last week we talked about mise en place, and we talked about the triangle method, we talked about zones and all that. Well, it's okay now that all of a sudden we have these cabinets. What do we fill them with? And what's the best way to accessorize and to do things like that? So that's what we're going to cover today. And as we go through, and you pick and choose, and you're going to find that there's different applications for pantries, and what do you do with your spices, and things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So in this webinar, we're going to build on last week's kitchen layout. We're going to have a better understanding of mise en place. We're going to understand the importance of accessorizing, and then we'll talk about base unit accessories, wall unit accessories, tall unit, and even miscellaneous. We're going to have anybody out there have dogs? We're going to have our friends, our little friends out there. We're going to take care of them today, and cover a little bit about everything. So feel free to ask questions. And a question came up about water damage and lighting. Okay. Yeah, lighting will be talked to, that's going to be 2 weeks from now, Carol. So we'll talk about that. Water damage, I don't know, you can call me on that one, and we can talk about that one-on-one. Okay, base units. One thing I want to show you, this is probably the biggest accessory that people want in the kitchen besides the recycled trash, and that is the plate drawer. But notice, remember in week 1, for the folks that took it, we talked about the walnut drawer box. There's a good example of what a walnut drawer box looks like. And this must be more of a European type of setting with cabinetry, because notice they have the metal sides on there. But that's what walnut looks like. So again, it's a small premium, but it is something. It's really pretty with the painted cabinets, especially. So what do we do now? Like if you remember last week in that design, remember we had that whole back wall where we had it all a lot of windows. And so what do we do with that windows? Where would we put our our dishes and things like that? So what we do is we go and we can utilize drawers. I've done kitchens without any drawers, especially using the European design of cabinetry. We can have a place for everything just in base cabinets. So you notice that there's the adjustable pegs, and we can go, and the cabinet there is a little narrow for plates. I like to go, I'll do a 24-inch, but I like to see at least 30 inches wide. And the other thing is that with that picture, I would not put the plates on the bottom. I would not want to be bending over that much. So I would go and put them in that second drawer down. So I would start with maybe 30 inches wide, second drawer down. And you can do multiple ones too, but that's a very valuable one. And naturally, I would place that right by the dishwasher, between the dishwasher and the eating area. Cutting boards. Cutting board is interesting. What we can do is a portable cutting board is not as popular today. What people are using more for cutting boards, they're going and doing having when you buy your sink. A lot of the sink brands today are going to have portable cutting boards that you can go and get the cutting board for that. This is pretty much not obsolete, but people are really not putting them into cabinetry as much as they're putting them into buying them with the sinks. The other thing you got to be careful with these things, these cutting boards, and that is the bacteria. You got to be very careful with that. So a lot of times what you should be doing is bleaching it down and after use and things like that. Roll-out shelves. I'd like to say these are very popular, but more and more people wanting drawers as opposed to rollouts. I still like to give rollouts in the kitchen, especially in a pantry, but in a base cabinet situation, I like to have a rollout where, maybe for some larger pots and things like that. Look at how there's two items here when you do a rollout, though, two actions. You have to open a door, and then you have to slide the rollout out. With a drawer, it's all one action. Now, the advantage to a rollout is usually they're adjustable. So we can take and we can adjust the rollouts to fit the larger pots and pans on the inside. So that's an advantage. And then the other thing too is by having the adjustability, I can get my larger pots to fit. Remember we talked last week and we talked 2 weeks ago about, custom cabinets. If you remember last week, remember I put that 2-drawer stack next to the Pro range and so that they could put their larger pots and pans. But you don't want to go and do a kitchen and then all of a sudden you take your large pot and it doesn't fit anywhere. So you want to make sure that either have the adjustability with the rollouts or you do it with the with a drawer and customize it to fit. Okay, spices. There's a lot of things we can do with spices. And everybody wants the need to have spices, which is rightfully so in a kitchen. Okay, so here we have what's referred to as a spice drawer. You notice it's very neat, it's very organized. You can have it all labeled. You can even, my friends out there that are very particular, they'll go and they'll alphabetize them and everything else. And the drawer's a really nice application. There's only one drawback to it. Notice that they're all the same size. So you would have to have all your spices be basically the same size and then fill them, okay, accordingly, and keep your larger inventory in a pantry or something. This is and the other thing too is I always promise, and I told the folks this morning in class, I watch people's pocketbooks closer than they do, and what do you want to invest? Here's a great application. This is very popular to have a whole pull-out system for your olive oil, your spices. Look at the canisters at the bottom. The only negative to that, it adds $500 to $600, $700 to the price, versus just something simple like an insert like that. But really a nice application. I do a lot of them, and you're going to see one even come up, a real nice application in a wall cabinet where you're not bending over for your spices and things like that. So that's what I refer to that as a pull-out base, and for specializing in spices and in oils. The other thing that I do is one of the manufacturers that I represent, there's actually a spice insert segment that goes into that so that they're actually angled and they're pointing out to the sides, which is really nice. So you can really be organized with it. And then you can also, for your oils and that, the bottom shelves can be adjustable. Okay, Lazy Susans. And we'll talk more about spices when this is segmented by base units, then wall units and tall units. Okay, there's a lot of things that we can do in the corners. And there's several ways that a Lazy Susan can work, and it depends. We're going to talk about the doors for a moment. It all depends on if you're going frame cabinetry, if you're going frameless cabinetry. But if you look here, you have a situation where you have two doors where one opens, then the other opens. Now, that's nice because it's not opening all into the room, one large door, but the only negative to that is you have to open one door before the other. Another way that Lazy Susans work is where they will take and have a piano hinge in the middle where the drawer actually opens at one. So there's only one set of hinges either on the left or on the right, and then you have the door, and then it all opens as one, and that's with a piano hinge. So that's another way. And a third way that sometimes people like, and the Europeans are really excellent at this, would be where the doors go into, the doors actually fold up like an accordion, and then they spin along with the shelf. That allows, by having that, those doors retract in, it gives you, able to give you a bigger Lazy Susan. So it all depends on the application. You're going European, or you're going traditional, or you're going frame, frameless, as to how those doors will work. So you want to make sure and you're aware of what happens there. So then what happens is, after that, you have your Susans, and you can see that it's spinning around nicely, and you can put your pots and pans, and you have that nice large opening. Now, Lazy Susans, just so you know out there, they're going to come, most manufacturers are going to have them in two sizes. They're going to have them go and have them at 36. I'm talking about the back wall. They're going to have them at 36 inches, and then they're going to have them at 33 inches. The 33-inch one is not going to give you that big opening like that, like you see right there. Now, people are really intrigued by what's coming up here. Okay, so a Lazy Susan is for a 90-degree corner. Coming off the corner, you have 36 inches one way, 36 inches the other way. Okay, now all of a sudden, if you have, I'm sure some of you folks out there have what's called a blind cabinet. And a blind cabinet is where you have to reach in. So you're going to see several applications here of how we treat a blind cabinet. Some people today, talk about taking a negative and turning it into a positive. All of a sudden, some people like this stuff even better than Lazy Susans, because now look what's happening. You have the blind, it pulls out, and then the part that was in the back that you can never reach slides forward. So you have two actions. You have some of the pots and pans coming right out into the room for you, and then what doesn't is going to slide forward, and that's called a Magic Susan. So every manufacturer might have a little bit different terminology, but that's a magic, referred to in my world as a Magic Susan. Here, if we have Susan, we have to have a Charlie. This is the old-fashioned way. If we don't have the shelf, this is the old-fashioned way to have things pull out. So now you see what's happening. These are shelves. They're swiveling, half moon. Some people call this a half moon Susan. But now what's happening is we have a half moon, and it comes out, angles, and then if you spend a little more money, those shelves can actually slide forward. So that's what's referred to as a blind Charlie. I do not sell many of these Charlies because of situations like this today. And it all comes down to, again, what do you want to invest? And that's why you take these webinars, and you can see all your options and talk intelligently to people as you go out there. Here's the one people want. This is it right here. This is the baby. This is called a Le Mans system. Now, do you notice how unique those shelves are? So now, instead of having this Magic Susan, where that back area, even though it slides forward, it's still stuck in the space, okay? Now all of a sudden, look what's happening. See half of that still stuck in the space? Everything in that cabinet is being pulled out into the room. And that's called the Le Mans system. And this is a European system. When I say European, that does not mean you have to go out and buy a European product, because I can retrofit a lot of this stuff into the American. I'm doing a job right now where I went in American cabinetry, and I retrofitted it with the European fittings. So that's what this is. So you can see we have some nice applications. And then we also, the other thing too, it's not an accessory, but you don't have to do any of this stuff. You could just keep that blind with a shelf, and where I'll do something like that, an application would be, let's say, in a laundry room, or not a heavily trafficked area where you're not going to get into it every day and you want to save the money. Here's one you wouldn't think of. Vegetable bin. I put the vegetable bin probably into 30 or 40% of my kitchens. I personally would love it, to have the vegetables, instead of running to the back pantry or something like that, would be able to keep my, onions and potatoes and things like that And you notice it's a plastic tray, so you can take it out and scrub it and wash it. Usually it would fit into a 15-inch cabinet. Now, I wouldn't locate it right next to where they have it in the slide next to the stove. That doesn't make sense. I would rather have drawers there, and things like that, for the cooking. And where I usually will put a vegetable bin, I usually put a vegetable bin maybe off towards the pantry area or out of the strategic area of the kitchen. Bread box. Think of the past, maybe. I don't know if people are eating as much bread today, but usually when they're eating bread, they freeze it. So very seldomly will I be putting bread boxes in. The one time I will put a bread box in, I keep referring back to the Europeans. Like a bread box here, I don't know how effective that is with the metal, but one thing that's really effective that I use a lot of times with my European line, they have a bread box that's made out of clay. Talk about making sense. What does clay do? It absorbs moisture. So it really, really works. Here, people usually end up putting either candy bars or crackers or things like that in there, but it's out there for us. You notice it's interesting in a lot of these pictures is that everything they put at the bottom, and that's something that you want to think about, like when you start accessorizing, about bending over and things like that. Do you want to do that? Charging, okay? A charging drawer. People love this. I remember last week they wanted the people when we designed that next to the refrigerator. Okay, this is what they wanted. Actually, they wanted it with not a drawer. They wanted it like open, where I put an open niche in a pantry. But very, very valuable. I mean, all the time you walk around a house and a kitchen and that, everybody has their things charging off the outlets and things like that. So now we can have everything neat and orderly, mise en place, everything has its place. We have our outlet in there, we have our charging jacks, everything we need, and it's all tucked away. So that's nice. And the other thing is, you know where it's at. You're not always looking for the cube and the cord and the looking for outlet space. Coffee. I am not a big, or I don't drink coffee. This would not be beneficial for me, but look at this. If you have the Keurig, they now have the K-cup drawers where you can go and keep all organized and keep all your coffees and all your Keurig, pods, everything all organized right there for you, and have it by a coffee station. So they think of everything when they do that. Here's an interesting one. Now, one of the things that with the European kitchens that they do, and this is not necessarily a European concept, but one of the things that the Europeans do, because they live in very, very small spaces, is they will utilize the toe kick. They'll put drawers down there. They'll put a toe kick, a step stool. So a lot of times they'll utilize these toe kicks for extra space. But look at here. So instead of running to the back to the laundry room or somewhere to get a step stool, you can actually put it right there in the toe kick. And then it would slide out, you have it, you lift it, and then you slide it right back in. So very, very convenient for the kitchen. The only drawback is they charge you a little bit of money for that thing. It's not going to be the same price as just buying a portable one and throwing it in a laundry room, but it's there for us if we want it. Trays. Okay, where do I put trays? Do I put it in the base cabinet? Do I put it in the tall cabinet section? It all depends on how much you're going to use and how many you're going to have. Like some of people may use them for cookie sheets, some may use them for platters, some may use them for muffin pans or a pizza stone, things like that. So it all depends on what you're going to use it for. So when I work with somebody, I hold out my hands and I say, where do I stop? Like how much space do you want to dedicate for that? A great spot for those things that I put a lot of them would be above a oven or above a refrigerator. If you don't go with the built-in refrigeration, there's a cabinet above. So that is somewhere to put it. If you're going to want it really easily accessible and you don't want to raise up, you're going to go ahead and put it, in a base cabinet. Appliance garages. Now, do you notice this is not the old-fashioned appliance garage with the tambour? People really are not interested in that tambour today. There's different things that we can do with appliance garages. First of all, do you want one? Okay. A lot of people, I mean, look at that KitchenAid, that beautiful olive color on that KitchenAid. Most of the appliances today they're fashion statements, so you don't want to cover them. Some people still want to cover their appliances. Now, there's a couple different, you'll see another thing we can do with the mixer in a minute, but here's the appliance garage. If you don't do the garage itself with the tambour, you can do a flip up. You can also have doors that are hinged left and right that open up. The only negative to that, you're fighting doors. Like if all of a sudden we had two doors there hinged left and right, you're going to be fighting that one door on the right to get into that unit. I could get fancy smancy and I can go and do retractable doors too, you know, so it all depends. But I don't know if people want to invest that kind of money. I would say probably 20% of the kitchens put in appliance garages today. Tilt down sink blank. This I think is almost a given, and this is a nickel and dime item, but a lot of people say, well, it gets messy, you got to clean it, da 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 da. But otherwise, it's dead space. I mean, you could heck put it in there and hide your jewelry when you go on vacation, worst case. But you can go and put stuff so it's not all crapped up on the top of the countertop, and you could go and just put it and tuck it right down there. It could be anything from the Brillo pads. It could be people wear gloves when they're working at the sink, that could tuck them in there. And the other thing, it doesn't have to be made of stainless steel. It could be made of plastic. They have them plastic, and then you just unhook it and throw it in the dishwasher, and then go from there with it. Okay, Carol, I saw you had a question. I was waiting until we hit it. Carol's question is, do I recommend putting the trash by the sink? Most definitely. So one of the things, usually what would happen is a dishwasher goes on one side, and then I'll usually put the trash right on the other side. If all of a sudden, for some reason that it doesn't work, I'll put it in an island or somewhere else, but that's very, very, very seldomly. It's always pretty much going to go into a right next to the sink. So you can see here, this is a single trash. Are you folks into recycling? If you're into recycling, okay, then you want this. And this is a recycling trash unit. So basically, it's going to be the same size as this unit, except turned on its side. So the width of the cabinet's going to be wider, but you're not going to lose space with having the trash. Now, a long time ago, what they did, they would go and have a door swing open. I don't know if any of you have it at home now, but they would actually have the door swing open and then the trash would come out like a rollout. That was absolute disaster because people would not open the cabinet, the door all the way, and they would yank that thing out and would split the door. So now what they do is they go ahead and they attach it. Now, here's something interesting. This is something that you're going to have to think of when you're going to be doing your kitchen. And there's no right or wrong to this, but see this cabinet here? Okay, first of all, the sink would be there. It wouldn't be hinged like this, but you notice what they did, okay, they put the hardware right there on the side. So when it's shut, you don't know if you have a trash or not. I'm not a big believer of that. I like to have the trash, the drawer, because when you open that, it's going to always open cocked a little bit. You're not going to get a nice pull out by opening it from one side. So where I put it is I'll put it like on a drawer. I'll put it right across the top. That's something when you're going to be putting your hardware on, you're going to have to decide. I think you get a much better pull when you pull it from the top. Now, do you notice there's no hardware on that one? Okay. You can now go and have what's called Servomatic, where you can actually touch it with your knee and it'll bump open. And they have electric Servomatics. They have some that are just on a catch system. And you can do that with cabinets in your kitchen too. There's cabinets that you can go around and your whole kitchen could be electric and you just touch it. The only problem with that is I always go over to Europe and things like that, to the studios where they've done that on some of the displays, and you just go lean to talk to somebody and your butt's being hit every time you're leaning on a cabinet. It's bumping in and out. So that's the recycling trash. Knife drawers. Knife drawer is a popular item. It can either be on a block or on the top, or it could be in a drawer. I personally like them on a block because when I cook, I like to have easy access to it, not to be opening a drawer. But you can see how organized they can be by putting them in a drawer. So you'll have your choice with the knives. Do you put them on the block or do you put them in a drawer? And then how much space do you dedicate to it also? Cutlery dividers. Okay, so we could go and we can do dividers for silverware. We can do them for, put it by the sink and things like that. If you go and do that, again, you want to dedicate how big do you want for that. The other thing too is I do a lot of kosher kitchens. Never talked to you guys about that, but I do a lot of kosher kitchens where you're going to have different zones for your meats and your dairies, in putting things. And so you're going to have to dedicate a certain amount for each section. I'm not a big fan of this one at all, but you're going to see it out there. This is the 2-tier cutlery divider. And the 2-tier, the reason I don't like that, you have to be very flat, not be able to stack things. So for that thing to open and close, and I just think that you're always going to get things jamming in there. Not really a big, I don't think I put one in the last 15 years, but again, it's going to be out there for you. Now there may be a situation where, well, I can think of a spot, it's not just kitchens I do bathrooms, or I do closets. That's a perfect example for a jewelry situation where you could slide, on top and things like that. So there are applications for it, just in a kitchen where you have the bulk items. I'm not a big believer in that. Here's one I love. Okay, now this is very similar to a cutlery divider, but this is for utensils, for by your cooking and things like that. Those dividers are adjustable from side to side. So we can go and we can say, okay, can we adjust maybe one area we want bigger, one area we want smaller? Can we adjust them in width and have that flexibility? So when you get this, I would ask, can I get them adjustable? Because it's very helpful to do that. Okay, so adjustable utensil dividers. Okay, now we are going to leave the American world for a minute and we're going European. Again, this does not mean that you have to buy a European cabinet because we can retrofit. But now all of a sudden, talk about mise en place again. Look what's happening here. Notice that larger drawers, but look how each one is compartmentalized. There's a knife segment. Now they have their divider systems, but they do them into quads. And you're going to see some other interesting things coming up. The other thing I'm going to be showing you, but I'm going to tell you here right now, look at the black mat underneath the dividers. That's non-slip, very popular with the Europeans, and I put them into American kitchens also, where we can go and we can have, you can put them on your rollouts, you can put them on your large drawers. So none of your pots and pans when you open are going to be slipping and sliding. They're all going to stay put. Cheap too, I mean, very inexpensive. Oh, also, here's another unique thing. Anybody really want to have some fun? How about we light the cabinets when you open? Look at that. That's not for show. That's there if you want it. We can open your cabinet and you can have lighting so that all your cabinets light up when you open the cabinets. More examples of your divider systems. Okay. One interesting thing, so I showed you, I think, in week 1, but notice that what the Europeans do, they use glass sides to the cabinets, or at least the brand that I carry do, and so that you can see into the sides as opposed to having to always look down. Here's an interesting one. What do we do for pan storage? Remember the plate drawer? Same concept, except what have we just done? We now have the pegboard. Look what's happening. We now have these adjustable, they screw from the bottom, dividers. So you can compartmentalize where your pots and pans so they're not slipping around. And then do you see that felt line front section to the drawer? Anybody want to guess what that is? How about lids? All your lids could be in the front. My favorite part of this has nothing to do with storage. I just think it's so ingenious because, you know, I've went all these years with the American pegboard for the plate drawer, things like that. Look what the Europeans do. See those holes? Those holes are filled. And you know what they're filled with? Rubber nubs. So now your pots and pans don't slip, you know? So we can say you can't have that non-slip mat because you have to have that flexibility, adjustability. So what do? They go and they give us little nubs in there. So really, really creative. Another example. This drawer is brand new. Look it over on the top right. You know what that is? That's a spice drawer, spice section. Those are like little pyramids, and you can lay your spices down and they're not going to roll around in there. The other thing that you can do, I don't know if I missed it, but one of them have for your aluminum foil, they have a section. You put your aluminum foil in. Actually, it's right there. It's hard to see, but you see where the knife is on the bottom left? And then look in the middle, you have those two long things. That is for your wax paper and your aluminum foil. So you just go unpack it out of the cardboard, set it in there, and when you want aluminum foil, open the drawer and you rip it. Talk about organized. Here's the other option for the mixer lift. It's a nice option if you can dedicate losing an 18-inch cabinet. But now all of a sudden we put an outlet in the cabinet and there's your mixer. And then when you're done, it goes right back down. There's a close-up of the non-slip mats. Look how nice that is. Those, when you open and close that thing, those are not going to move. Remember up front, I also talked to you about how the doors fold like an accordion. This tells me right away this is a European shop. But see the drawer in the back? It's folded, so it's stuck in within itself, and then you're able to spin it. So you're not, look at, there's no door to fight. Okay, enough of base cabinets. Let's now go into some wall cabinets. Okay, so now what do? This is a hot one. This is very, very hot right now. I get a lot of people asking for this, and I've done it very successfully over the last couple of years. But now, no more bending over for the spices. So basically now let's take that pull-out spice section that was in the base. Let's bring it up so we don't have to bend over and look for it. And there it is. Very popular. They're usually 9 to 12 inches. They're usually 9 to 12 inches wide. This one here looks like it's for a 9-inch cabinet. There's Old Faithful. John, do I really need all that stuff? Can't I just put my spices on a door? Yes, you can. They would be bigger than that picture. They would be taller and they'd be wider. But yes, you can. At the other time too, what I do with spices, if you go look at some of my work in my portfolio on the website, sometimes people want the spices exposed, you know, and like to have a whole section, like an open cabinet section of exposing the spices, which is really nice. You just always have to keep them nice and orderly. That would be the only negative to it. Floating shelves are very popular. Between getting the pie and teaching and everything, I did an hour's worth of design where I'm designing a basement. I also do basements, and they wanted floating shelves for the kids' trophies and things like that, you know, to display them. And then I put specialty lighting in them and things like that. But they're very popular in the kitchen too. Glass doors, a couple different way glass doors come. Actually several ways, but this is a very popular one where you just do glass doors. And then we either put mullions on them. Remember we talked about the teeter-totter in week 1 about the 4 styles, whether it's you want more transitional, leaning towards contemporary, or go more traditional. Here's our frameless kitchen. Okay, so you see on those drawers, they're frameless. There's no frame in between. It's very clean look. But the teeter-totter here went more traditional because they put mullions on the glass doors. Now, here's a couple interesting things. What I do, and you have the choice, but see the mullions? So if we do want a traditional, what would drive people crazy if you're going to put mullions, look how that is absolutely perfect. You notice that the shelves line up right behind the mullions. So, and the other thing too is if you don't say anything to the factory, they're going to drill for holes for those to be adjustable. So a lot of times what I will do in a glass cabinet is I will say to the factory, do not drill the holes, and then I'll have the installer on the job drill, and then we can line them up with the mullions. I will do that even in a cabinet that doesn't have the mullions, because you don't want to look in a cabinet with clear glass and then all of a sudden see all those holes that are for the adjustable sides. Here was a slide from class. You guys remember this morning that took the class we talked about. This is the most popular way people are accessorizing with glass in kitchens. And what that's doing is it's taking not the entire cabinet, but just a segment of it. Now, do you notice here how when I designed this, I did not stack one cabinet on top of the other. That is one cabinet with a split panel. And then I put a partition behind where that split is. My favorite story that I said this morning was that a lady and a husband out in Bay Village, or Avon Lake, and they went and had 4 daughters. They went to a pottery class when the kids were 9 to 12 years old, and they had them each do a beautiful piece of pottery. And now, as the kids are off in college and everything, it's a great memory having each child has their own piece of pottery in there for the mother and father as their home, which I thought was really special. So that's a way you can do glass, and it doesn't have to be clear glass. That could be frosted glass. It could be a lot of things. Notice also I always put lights in it. Wine racks. Wine racks are still popular. And you notice here with the wine rack, and I'll be delivering a kitchen that has this in Independence in a couple weeks. And they decided people don't want the old-fashioned wine racks. They want something with a little more interest. And you notice again, this is a transitional look, leaning a little more with the no mullions, and they did glass shelves. But notice that the wine racks are a little more contemporary in style. Would work in a beautiful transitional to modern kitchen. So there's different things that you can do with a wine rack, as opposed, as far as accessorizing how you want it to look. Tall units. We keep coming back to this doggone pull-out pantry. You can see how popular it is. There it is again. So here's now a pull-out pantry. So we can do this. A lot of people like this. It wouldn't act as their main pantry, but somebody may have a lot of olive oils and spices and things like that where they want that easy access just to be able to pull it out. Those are usually, by the way, anywhere from 12 to 18 inches wide. Chef's pantry. I'm not a big believer in this. You'll spend a lot of money and you don't get a lot of the storage that you would get with just rollouts and things like that, but you get easy access. So what happens is you can go and have the doors open, put can storage on the doors. Forget the chef's pantry. The can storage on the doors for a pantry is really nice. So you don't need to have the inside. You could have those can storage there and then just have adjustable shelves behind. And you're not digging back because this can storage is actually on the doors. But by doing the chef's pantry, everything swings out, but you're losing a lot of space and you're spending a ton of money to do it. So my recommendation would be just to either do rollout shelves, which you'll see coming up, or to do can storage with adjustable shelves behind. People all the time are looking to say, can I go and have some broom storage in my kitchen? So I'm doing a lot, and I do it a lot in this application. I recently designed a kitchen in Strongsville, and we're putting it on the side like that, so that's a broom. And the other thing that can go in there, it doesn't necessarily have to be just brooms. It can be brooms, could be vacuum, could be a dust buster, could be a lot of things. One of the things I'd like to do in cabinets like that is make sure I put an outlet, so that if you do have that dust buster or something that you want to charge, that can go into that space. This is the most popular one right here. So what you do is you can put your rollouts, and then you can put your storage above. You know, you would not put rollouts in that top section because when you pull them out, you'd not be able to see what's in there. So you put rollouts in the bottom, and then you would go and have your shelves on top. Now, a couple things about this one is when you go, when those doors are shut, what I would like to see here, and it all depends on the application. I can't see what's happening elsewhere. That's a heck of a lot of space on top for adjustable shelves. What I would have liked to have seen, unless it's lining up with something in the kitchen that I can't see, would be have taller doors at the bottom and smaller doors at the top. The other thing you could do with a pantry is you could put drawers at the bottom, maybe 2 drawers, and then open doors and have some rollouts and have adjustable shelves. So there's a lot of different things that we can do here. But notice that you have, look how much storage. You're not losing a lot of storage at all by this application versus that chef's pantry. Okay, miscellaneous accessories. This is one that I love. Americans don't go after it as much. And if you have a modern kitchen, you know, Tina, if you're listening, you know, from this morning with a modern kitchen, you can see, you know, if you wanted to ever have a little bit of fun on your backsplash. Now, this is over on a wall, but you could just envision this underneath the wall cabinetry. Look now, look at, if you don't want things, let's say to me, John, you make a point with that knife drawer, and I'm losing a drawer, and I know I have to open a drawer, but I don't want a block sitting on my countertop. Then I got to be cleaning it all the time, this and that. And so what's happening is you put it into a rod system, and now your spices can be up there on a little shelf. You can have your knife hanging there. If you look over on the left, you can have a place for your cookbook. And guess what the Europeans do? They go and put LED lighting there for it also. Somebody asked a question, space question mark. I don't understand which slide that's pertaining to or question. So if you can elaborate a little more, then I can answer that for you. Pull-out ironing board. Can do a pull-out ironing board in the kitchen. Can put it in a laundry room. Can put it in a bathroom, in a closet. Do them a lot in closets, things like that. But now you can have a portable little ironing board that goes and folds down. And then you have access to, you know, need to iron something quickly, which is really a nice feature. File drawers. We don't do a lot of desks. Okay, I mentioned that last week. We have more command centers. And so with this desk, now all of a sudden we can go, and I can do portable desks. I can do a desk where a shelf, you know, you could pull one of the drawers could actually be a countertop where you could pull it out and sit when you want to. You could have, you know, most people don't want a file drawer in their kitchen to be able to keep, you know, items, whether it be recipes, whether it be anything pertaining to the children and activities and calendars and things like that. So we can, you know, have 1 or 2 file drawers in the kitchen without having to have a desk. Here's one, TV. What do we do with the TV? Do we want a TV? And then if we want a TV, what do we do with it? So a TV this big usually does not go into the kitchen, but we could put smaller TVs in. I usually build them in. Sometimes in the past, people have wanted them, you know, not to see a TV, maybe behind retractable doors or something. The only negative to that is, again, people that do that, they end up spending all that money on retractable doors, and then it's always open. But that is something that we could do, or you go with a smaller TV and we just build it in somewhere. But there's a lot of nice things. If you remember last week again, how I built that TV in, that turned out really nice. So if you go onto my gallery, that kitchen in Hudson that recently finished, you know, put a TV into that kitchen really nicely. And it also has to go into a strategic area where you're going to be able to watch it. You know, you want to put it somewhere. And sometimes people say, well, John, I don't watch it as much as I listen to it. You know, so then that's a whole nother thing. So that's all has to be taken in consideration. Open shelving. Do we want any open shelving in the kitchen? Now, one of the reasons why I put this slide up instead of just throwing some open shelving, you know, remember there's a difference between open shelving and the floating shelving. That floating shelving was making a statement. They were 2.5 inches thick. But one of the reasons why I put this slide up here too was, Look at the wood. Remember day one when we talked about cabinet woods and things like that? I said walnut's very popular. There's a great shot of walnut. That's what walnut looks like, and it's one of the hottest woods this year. So you get a feel of what that is. Okay. So Tina had asked the wall LED, that wall, you know, the space that can go into any regular space, Tina, between the countertop, okay, and the wall cabinet, and usually have about 18 inches. So that wall shelf can fit right in there. One of the things about European cabinetry, okay, European cabinets is a little bit different in height. So with the American cabinets, it's usually about 18 inches. With the Europeans, you usually have about 20 to 21 inches in between. So you have a little more space for that wall LED. But you can see here, we can work open shelves in anywhere into the kitchen for display, for bookshelves, for things like that. Here's one of my favorite. Anybody ever happens to visit my studio here in downtown Chagrin Falls, I have these LED shelves. These are really sharp. So what that is, it's a metal shelf. They stick out about 6-7 inches. They're floating, and underneath is LED lit. And I keep them on 24 hours a day. They really, really are nice. So we can do a lot with LED lighting today. I have a lot of fun with LED lighting. And when 2 weeks from now, we'll be going through all that. I promise I take care of my friends. There, I did it. Okay. So now all of a sudden we have our dog command center. The drawers could be for leashes, for chewies, could be for anything. Then all of a sudden we have our bowls, you know, so the dogs don't have to be bending over to the floor. I've actually done this also if we have smaller dogs where we've done it and pulled it out in the toe kick. Look at the dog food, that it's in a pull-out container. So everything can be really self-contained. Did a job in Cleveland Heights a year ago where we did this, and people love it. Tina, just for you again, I know you're here, but there's that thin countertop that we talked about. One of the things we talked about in class today was that Tina likes more of a modern style, was seeing the countertops being thinner. So anybody out there that's thinking of a kitchen more of a modern style, instead of that 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch countertop, notice that's a 3/4 inch countertop. Very sleek looking. And here, as we're winding down to the end, this is a winner. Why not? Okay, you have to broom. Okay, so why not broom? And then you have to grab the dustpan. And who has the dustpan? How come they didn't leave it with the broom? Blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you have to bend over, you have to pick it up, then you have to go empty it, things like that. Why not have just a one section in the kitchen and go over, and then on the left, the broom is hiding it, there's a kick switch. So you kick the switch and it sucks. It gives you a large vacuum, and it sucks everything right in. And there's like a vacuum bag inside, and then periodically you just empty the bag and just throw the bag out and then just replace it. So that's really a nice item. I'm selling a lot of those right now. So that can go into the side of a cabinet, into a toe kick. And the nice thing about it, this is not like the old-fashioned ones where in there, you know, it's a central back system, things like that. It's all you need when you're doing the kitchen, just an outlet, and then you're done. And just put one into Brecksville. That's it. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to do appliances, which is going to be they're all very popular, like I said. But if anybody has any feedback, you can tell me good, you can tell me bad, you can tell me whatever you want. And if anybody ever needs help, by the way, I do have this design guide. If anybody wants it, they can call me and I'll drop it off to their house. But everything I'm talking about in these webinars and all that is in this design guide. And people that are taking my class, most of you get it in my class, you purchase it. It's $15, it cost me $14 to print. So I don't make any money on it, but it helps you guys. Okay, so thank you very much. We'll look forward to 10 o'clock start again next week with appliances. Thank you. Bye-bye.